don't need a lecture. Welcome to the Caledonian Elixir. This is the podcast that takes a tragic deep dive into the darkest recesses of the human condition. I'm your host Vincent, and today on the Elixir I'm going to discuss the mysterious death of Elisa Lam, how her death is connected to an infamous hotel with a history of horror, and dissect the theories that suggest this in fact was a case of supernatural murder. Elisa Lam was born on April 30th, 1991 in British Columbia, Canada. Lam's parents, David and Yina Lam, immigrated from Hong Kong years earlier and had established a steady and secure life for their family in Canada. Elisa had lived a normal life with interests in fashion, poetry and literature, and at the age of 21 she enrolled herself as a student at the University of British Columbia, where she studied psychology. Lam had been diagnosed with bipolar and depression in her late teens and had been prescribed several medications. In addition, she had made several posts on her Tumblr account exposing her struggles with depression and mental health. In spite of her depression, Elisa was a happy, creative young woman, and on January the 26th, 2013, she went on a getaway trip from her studies at the University of British Columbia. Her parents had been wary of her travelling by herself, but Elisa was adamant she wanted to go. However, as a compromise, both Elisa and her parents agreed to keep in touch every day, and on January the 28th, she checked into the Cecil Hotel. The Cecil Hotel was built in Los Angeles in the 1920s. The hotel has a long and lurid history of suicide, murder and horror, attracting several serial killers into its rooms, such as the Night Stalker Richard Ramirez and Jack Unterweger. Jack Unterweger was a notorious serial killer who stayed and committed a string of murders at the Cecil in the early 1990s. Richard Ramirez killed more than a dozen women on the 14th floor of the Cecil. Other notorious deaths include the Black Dahlia Elizabeth Short, whose mutilated body was discovered at the ground floor. The hotel stands on Skid Row and has also witnessed dozens of suicides and drug overdoses in its history. Therefore, the dark reputation of the hotel is well deserved. When Elisa checked in, she was initially assigned a shared room. However, not long after, her roommates complained about her behaviour, and as a result, Elisa was moved to her own room, with the hotel manager, Amy Price, claiming it was due to Elisa's antagonistic behaviour towards her roommates. During her stay at the Cecil, Elisa attended a live taping of the show Conan and was also seen drinking at a bar. The last person reported to see Elisa was Katie Orphan, manager of the last bookstore, who stated that Elisa was in her store, that she was outgoing and friendly, and even purchased gifts for her family. However, on January the 31st, the day Elisa Lam was scheduled to check out of the Cecil, her parents David and Yina had not heard from her, and again, as Elisa agreed to contact her parents every day and had done so until the 31st, they decided to report her missing to the Los Angeles Police Department. This is when our story assumes a sinister reality with all the hallmarks of a horror. The police began a search of the hotel. Officers searched rooms, the rooftop, questioned the guests and staff. They even brought in sniffer dogs, and nothing. It was as if the world opened up and swallowed Elisa full. When the police released security footage of Elisa in an elevator acting erratic, the public interest in the case boomed. This was in part due to the very strange behaviour of Elisa in the elevator, but still no evidence of her whereabouts could be substantiated. Then, on February the 13th, almost 2 weeks after Elisa was reported missing, everything changed. Several guests at the hotel had complained about the taste of the tap water, with even one guest complaining the discoloration of the water while taking a shower. So, as a result, the hotel maintenance worker decided to check the water tanks located on the roof, and there, in one of the water tanks, he discovered the bloated naked body of Elisa Lam floating. The autopsy performed on Elisa Lam concluded on February the 21st, with the coroner determining her death as inconclusive. The LAPD, after stating her death as unexplained, then ruled it as an accident, with her mental health being a contributing factor. However, there is so much more about Elisa's death that is sinister, strange, and just damn unanswered. To begin with, how did her body accidentally find its way inside a 14-foot water tanker? The LAPD deemed her mental health a factor, therefore they claim it must be suicide. But if Elisa killed herself, wouldn't it be simpler, quicker to just jump off the roof? After all, she was on the roof. Instead, we are told she made her way up to the roof, removed all her clothes, proceeded to climb up a 14-foot water tank, climb inside, then close the lid behind herself before drowning and dying. That description sounds very far-fetched and to me inexplicable. In addition, the police and sniffer dogs had just days earlier checked the roof, with the dogs picking up no scent. Even Elisa Lam's parents were unsatisfied with the results of the investigation, claiming their daughter had no history of suicidal ideation. Also, as stated earlier, the glare of the media attention skyrocketed with the release of the elevator footage. So what is to be concluded when it was revealed the elevator footage, which is the last time Elisa was seen alive, that was taken just hours before her death, had been edited and it had been tampered with? But this is not the end of the story. Here it becomes even more brain-bending. Around the same time as the discovery of the body of Elisa Lam in the water tank, on the roof of the Cecil Hotel, many guests in the hotel and people in the surrounding area began falling ill. It had been discovered the homeless population of Skid Row had experienced an outbreak of tuberculosis. As a result, the CDC, Centre for Disease Control, were called in and an investigation began. A few days after the outbreak, the CDC localised the outbreak of tuberculosis to a water tank on the roof of the Cecil. Indeed, it was that same water tank that just days earlier Elisa Lam's body was discovered. However, what makes this even more bizarre and unsettling is the name of the test used by the CDC, which was called the Lam-Elisa test. Coincidence or supernatural synchronicity? There is so much more to the death of Elisa Lam and the hotel she died inside, so I will now explore 3 theories that could potentially explain this gruesome tragedy. Many researchers have theorised a paranormal force at work in the Cecil. Indeed, the supernatural threads that weave together the death of Elisa are varied. One such explanation is the elevator ritual. This is a paranormal ritual that originates from Korea that gives the participant access to another world. To play the game, you must be alone. have access to a building with more than 10 floors and use an elevator. It is said by visiting floors in a specific order, one will eventually encounter a young woman who enters the elevator on the 5th floor. The participant is instructed not to engage a young woman. If the participant does, then he or she will never return to our world and will soon die. However, the player of the ritual does not engage. If the player does not engage with the woman, one will reach another world. This other world looks like our own, except it is dark, empty of life, except for a burning red cross in the distance. When looking at the elevator footage, it is suggestive that Elisa may be playing the elevator ritual. It could also explain why she attempts to hide in the elevator. Did she encounter the demonic young woman? Elisa's death also mirrors the 2005 film Dark Water. The body of a young woman is discovered in a water tank in this film on a roof, and Elisa was known to have been a fan of this film, which on its own is quite unsettling. Others have speculated, due to the high number of murders and serial killers that stayed in the hotel, that the Cecil is haunted, possessed by a demonic force. Again, when watching the elevator footage, the feeling of something dark stalking Elisa is hard to shake. It does appear that she is communicating with something in the elevator, something menacing and instructing. In the footage, she frantically pushes the elevator buttons, then waits for the doors to close. But when nothing happens, she crouches, hides in the corner of the elevator. When nothing appears, she tentatively steps out, engages with someone or something in the corridor, just out of view of the camera. Elisa walks away from the elevator, and eerily, it is only then that the elevator doors close. Could there be a dark entity at the Cecil? There is, however, another theory that Elisa was murdered by a group or cult inside the Cecil Hotel. At the same time when Elisa visited the Cecil Hotel, there were 3 registered sex offenders staying there. In addition, the hotel had recently been put under new management, with renovation and a new upmarket strategy planned. That has been suggested that these plans would have raised room rates for hotel guests, thereby affecting long-term residents the most. Alan Taylor, a convicted rapist who was a resident of the Cecil for 26 years, was a resident while Elisa was there. Did Taylor or a coalition of residents murder Elisa in order to prevent the upmarket transformation of the hotel? There is some evidence for this theory. Around the same time of Elisa's death, Alan Taylor was accused by another guest of rape. To add to this, didn't I say earlier, the video footage of Elisa in the elevator had been tampered with, and there would be only 2 groups with access to that footage: the Los Angeles Police Department and the staff of the Cecil. If there was a conspiracy to prevent the renovation of the hotel, the discovery of a decomposing body would have caused the rents to stay down. But there is more. It has also been claimed that Elisa's death was part of a government plot to test a new resistant form of tuberculosis. And there is circumstantial evidence to support this, as a government contractor working for Raytheon was a guest at the Cecil during the period of Elisa's stay. Also, there was an outbreak of tuberculosis localised to the water tank where the body of Elisa Lam was found. However, the final theory, the simplest and official explanation, to me, is the most terrible. That Elisa Lam's death was caused by suicide brought on by her deteriorating mental condition. Indeed, the testimony of her former roommates and the elevator footage reveal she was behaving erratic. To add to this, she did have a diagnosis of bipolar disorder, and the media hype and conspiracy theories about her death, well, isn't it true that the strange behaviour of madness never fails to attract attention? And when it does, would we rather not have the invisible connections of home and family than the isolation of a hotel with dangerous residents? Her deteriorating mental health at the Cecil could have made her a target, as the respected psychologist Jung said. It is the fact that we cannot stand abnormal people anymore, so there are very many crazy people now. But maybe, just maybe, there was a demonic entity with a power, not visible, with no shadow, that wrapped its etheric tendrils around Eliza as she wandered abroad amid strangers, carelessly into a foreign land, with her mind then body completely devoured by the black waters of the Cecil, as hungry ghosts haunted the hotel. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Caledonian Elixir and learned something. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll catch you later.